Very good morning to all our dear listeners and viewers. Welcome to ACFIM Talks, yet another edition. Today, the 12th of November 2021. The year is taking a corner. We are almost at the eve of 2021. And today with me, I have two distinguished guests. Already, one of them is logged on. The other one is trying to get the connection right. I'll be introducing them in a short while, but before I do so, let me first introduce the topic. We intend to passionately discuss the madness that is happening concerning supplementary budgets in Uganda. And I think for those of you who've been following the news, we've seen a 3.8 trillion supplementary budget tabled before Parliament. And a number of appropriations have been suggested. And this is hardly, I think they're about under 4 months, 3 to 4 months into the new financial year. And boom, we have different ministries, departments, and agencies tabling the supplementary budget. I will be talking about that in a short while. But also, it's important that you appreciate and understand that this is not new. There has been a pattern consistent. Last year alone, we had over 4 trillion in supplementary budgets, and even the year before, I think we had close to 3 trillion again in supplementary budgets. So we seem to be seeing a consistent pattern of supplementary budgets, and which speaks to a lot of things concerning planning, concerning budget discipline, and also concerning how do we manage the national budget. But before I unpack that conversation, allow me to introduce, first of all, one of the guests who is with us already, David Walakira. Is no stranger in this space. David Walakira is a public financial management specialist and a development policy analyst. For over 12 years, he has been in this game on issues around public policy development and also reviewing and monitoring public resources. He holds the certificate in tax policy and fiscal analysis and revenue forecasting from Georgia State University. He also has a master's degree in economic policy management and a bachelor's degree in economics from Walakira University. So, David, you are most welcome.
Thank you for having me today, Felix.
Yeah, the first time I interacted with David, it was then, I think, working with CS BAG, yeah, the advocacy group on budget. And then he did a lot of advocacy work on how we should, as a country, manage our budgets. Before I bring David into the discussion, let me, in the meantime, in the absence of Honorable, introduce her, and so that by the time she gets on the set, we are good to go. We also have Honorable Avur Jane Pakuto. I hope I get the names right. She's the current district woman representative of Pakwach District. This is her second term, and she's a member of the NRM. So I think we have the right person. She's currently the vice chairperson on the Committee of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development. She also holds a master's degree in finance and accounting. So when she gets on set, it will be good to have this conversation with two gallant gentlemen and the lady on the issues concerning how do we manage our budgets to the extent of having supplementary budgets being a frequent occurrence. Before we get started, let me welcome everybody to be part of this conversation. Please, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, ACFIM Uganda, also on our social media platforms. They will be shared on the screen shortly for you to be able to follow us on our Twitter handle, and also follow us on our Facebook page, ACFIM Uganda, and be part of the conversation. And you can send your comments, you can send your questions, so that we we see if we can be able to address them. Yes, they have been flashed on the screen. YouTube ACFIM Uganda, and our Facebook page is ACFIM. We are live on that page as well. And also our Twitter handle is at ACFIM UG. Okay. David, let me start this way. You are aware that Parliament is haggling with the Ministry of Finance on the newly tabled 3.8 trillion supplementary budget. It's not the first time it's happening, and I can guarantee you it's not the last time it will happen. And to many viewers out there, one would want to understand what possibly could explain this consistent madness. Sometimes I call it a demon, because for the past 5 years, shortly after, a couple of months into the new financial year, we see supplementary budgets come up. Probably for last year, one could make an argument of unprecedented times of the COVID-19 pandemic, but this time round, what could explain this madness of unending supplementary budgets? Is it incompetence? Is it impunity? What is it?
Well, thanks, Felix. First, to our viewers, and I know to you too, the idea that we have a revenue collection and expenditure framework that is futuristic, which we call a budget, in a sense, by design, warrants for scenarios that no one can see. For example, what's going to happen in June 2022. So the framers of the guidance to public financial management know that. Even you and I know that when we're doing our personal income and expenditure projections, there are things that you don't possibly envision that will happen. You know? And most common that we've seen, especially affecting most households, is health expenditure. You know, it's one of those that throws you into a shock. You know, and you have to spend. You didn't plan for it. Now, our form of supplementary as individuals is either transfer earnings. I'll call Felix, and either beg or borrow. You know, I will. If I have savings on my account, I'll draw down on my savings, and that's really in the minority of us as a people. So the notion of having an allowance or an ability to spend on intentions and events that were not foreseen is not purely alien. I think for me that needs to be the beginning point. And indeed, the 1995 Constitution, that is Article 156.2, acknowledges that and allows that within a year, if there is an item that was not envisioned in the appropriated funds, then it refers to an appropriate law, which in this case is our Public Finance Management Act. And there within, we're going to discuss that a bit shortly. So we have that allowance to help us be prudent, okay? Not to write our projections in stone as if we live in the future. No, we don't. That said, so then the question of what continues to fuel these supplementaries can partly be, and I think realistically explained by, well, no one lives in the future, so no one knew about COVID, no one knows about locusts, no one knows about, you know. And I think for me now, the devil gets into the detail now. Okay, yes, we have an allowance in our frameworks in the PFM Act and the Constitution to allow us to spend on events and scenarios that were unavoidable, unpredictable, and unabsorbable. Those three tenets, as put down in the PFM regulations, give us the ambits in which we need to work. I think for me, what's happening today is that, one, Felix, we accepted to weaken the intention of the original Public Finance Management Act around the issue of supplementary. The Act, as originally crafted, had a critical section, 28, that was thrown out because it was restrictive in its design, but also 25 was amended to delink supplementary from the contingency fund.
Yes. Yes.
So, and for me here, the linking per se could be done, but Section 28 was very critical. It spoke of a spending agency that needed a supplementary would write to the minister and explain the following things. What do you need the money for? Okay. 2, where is the source of that money going to come from? But 3, and more importantly, can't you push that to the next financial year's planning period? Those were some of the critical areas around approval of supplementaries that got thrown out of the window by the amendment of the PFM Act. And I think for me, that became the first opening of the door to anything and everything. But also, that means that the respect to the annual planning and budgeting process is weakened and watered down. One might want to ask, why bother plan meticulously? Because you see, the restrictions of the supplementary allowance forced or made it mandatory for the planning agencies to ensure that, okay, whereas I am allowed to spend on things that are not foreseen, but I need to be as realistic and as accurate as possible as I project my expenditure and interventions for the people of Uganda in the next planning period. So the amendment of the PFM Act, and indeed the same year when the act was commenced, is the same year when that amendment came through, around August. I recall that time we were really so furious with first the Minister of Finance bring that amendment, but also Parliament for approving it. So what we're
actually,
saying,
in actual sense, the president has sent to the first one on the 23rd of February.
and the amendment came through in August.
And then he has sent to the next one on the 14th of November. Remember, this is their preceding elections, 2016 elections. Proceed.
So the problem that we see right now is not that we have a leeway in our legal framework and PFM guidelines to use the supplementary window, because like where I started from, it's not avoidable. I mean, as in, it is the right thing to do for any plan to have an ability, a flexibility to allow for people to adjust to the unforeseen realities. But for me, it becomes, I think here, the role of the institution of the Parliament of Uganda to play the safeguard role, because in the expenditure appetite of the executive, with all the ambitions, we know what the NDP3 has, very ambitious. We know what the NRM manifesto has, very ambitious. And these documents are actually critical and vital to guide our expenditure priorities and needs, okay? Now, if we don't get to a point and be realistic about what we want to do and when we want to do it, we begin to see an attempt to want to do everything and anything within a short time. I've always thought the country Uganda is here with us to stay. And that's partly the purpose why we have multi-year development plans, okay? These are designed, in my simple understanding, to go over and above one government into the other, other factors constant. So the need to want to fix all your development shortages and outcomes within what seems to be, sometimes I feel like they're trying to do it in 1 year, and I'm like, but that's not practical. We have an NDP
Are you saying we have a very ambitious government? But before you answer that question, let me first bring in here, because there's something you've touched that tickles my next question, which I should bring in. I should bring in here the Honorable. Honorable, you're most welcome. I did introduce you in your absence, but finally it's good to have you on set. Can you hear me?
Oh, her connection seems to have
Honorable seems to be having a bad connection, because there's you've talked about, I've read about those principles of unabsorbable, unforeseeable, and unavoidable, that guide the supplementary budget. But I've been looking at some of the proposals. Honorable, can you hear me? Honorable, can you unmute? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good, Honorable. It's great to have you with us today. And you phoned us when the discussion had started, and thanks to David, he really laid a good foundation. I cut him short because there was something you raised that I feel you should answer concerning the principles that guide supplementary budgets, the principles of unabsorbable and foreseeable and then unavoidable. And for me, fair enough, they clearly explain the confines within which you should exercise seeking supplementary budgets. But sometimes I look at the proposals presented to Parliament, and I try to triangulate those proposals to these three principles, and I get defeated. Help me understand. For example, in this 3.8 trillion supplementary budget that is before your committee, where you're the vice chairperson, I'm seeing there are I think Nambole is requesting for 67 billion. I think renovation and rehabilitation, something which has just been talking about. We seem to be doing things as if there's no Uganda tomorrow. But I'm also seeing, often on many occasions, I see a lot of resources towards the State House, especially those projects under the State House. And also help me break it down. I don't know whether it will be you or David, whether for us to unpack what State House constitutes in terms of expenditures, because from my lay understanding as a taxpayer, State House is the house that that accommodates the president. So the expenditures I would expect in State House would be around the running of the home of the president. But now we have projects under State House, through which also that are funded using taxpayers' money, and they take a huge chunk of supplementary budgets. So some of the budget proposals that come through during supplementary budgets make me wonder whether these principles are really considered of unavoidable. Yes, some of the things are unavoidable and it's understandable, but there are those that really I don't think they qualify to be unavoidable, or qualify to be unforeseeable, or qualify to be unabsorbable. Sorry, that word disturbs me. Help me understand this and the viewers out there, Honorable.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Felix, for inviting me for this show. I want to make a small correction that I am not the vice chairperson of the budget committee, but rather I'm the vice chairperson for the Committee of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. But I'm glad to be on this. I'm glad to be on this show today, and I want to thank David for bringing the perspective of the legal framework that allows for supplementary budget. And I must say, we have in place the Public Finance Management Act, which stipulates clearly how the different processes of the revenue and expenditure of government in any financial year, and particularly Section 25 of the PFM Act speaks about the supplementary budget. And of course, there are the fundamentals, fundamental principles, as you have already mentioned, that should guide the Committee of Budget and Parliament at large when processing or scrutinizing the supplementary budget. Sure, these are the ideals that should be guiding Parliament, but over the years, I must say that this has not been adhered to. And to me, this is total indiscipline on the part of the planners for this economy. Because if we were to adhere to that, we would avoid a lot of mistakes that we are seeing happening in our economy. Why I say that is that budgets come from the fact that plans must have been critically scrutinized and priority therefore identified. But unfortunately, over the years. I mean, these are simple things from an economic perspective. You must plan. And because our needs are unlimited, you must then prioritize. And this we have been seeing it coming to different sectors or committees handling different sectors. We even see unfunded priorities. But within no time, you see these unfunded priorities smuggled back in form of supplementaries. And indeed, some of them could be, you ask yourself, was it not possible to absorb this in the budget framework paper or in the annual budget? But we have seen this over time. And to me, I just simply want to summarize this as indiscipline on the part of the planners for this country. Because yes, there are things like disaster, locust invading us, the COVID-19 invading us. But yes, even if we are planning well, and allocating resources as per the law, because the contingency plan requires that 5%, 0.5% should be allocated as contingency plan of the previous financial year budget. But time and again, you find that that percentage is not even adhered to.
Yeah.
Maybe if we are strict about giving 0.5%, it could have been maybe possible for the country to manage some of these disasters as they come. But even now that they're befallen us, if you recall, when we got the supplementary after the COVID-19, trying to respond, you saw how much, if it was not the intervention of Parliament, a lot was not going for health-related activities. And I think that is really unfortunate on the part of government. But as Parliament, we have the legal framework, we have the oversight mandate role to play, and we have time and again tried, but I must say it's getting out of hands. Because you find on average, within a financial year, you find about between 4 to 5 supplementaries coming in. So that's why I'm calling it in this green way of planning for the country.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Let me come to you, David, here on now. You've laid the case of the PFMA. So, and for me, I'm tying two questions here. First of all, is the problem with the law, do we have a weak link in the law, or the law as is can be good enough, but it's more about what Honorable was talking about, the indiscipline, but also, is there incompetence in the equation? Is there impunity in the equation? Because indiscipline alone, as Honorable puts it, for me, it's more of a manifestation of something. And as you respond to that question also, help me understand why it is always almost it's the same actors coming for the same ministries, departments, and agencies. Every time you see a supplementary budget, there are those you will always expect to appear. And I don't have to mention them probably, but why do we have that kind of trend?
Thanks, Felix, and thank you so much, Honorable, for those highlights. Before you go on, allow me also to say that in the conduct of our public financial management as a country, supplementaries are one of the ways in which Parliament appropriates funds that were not spent in the previous period. So they are also a way in which how Parliament appropriates loans that have been approved in the middle of a financial year that were for a reason or two, where by the time the budgets were being drawn, that discussion hadn't yet been concluded. And of course, it's hard to put figures in the budget that you're not sure about whether or not they will come. So, and here the classic example was with the IMF money that we got last year. I just want to say that supplementary budgets are also a PFM tool to allow for expenditure of resource that was either carried forward from the previous planning period or for a resource that has come in the middle of the planning period in a manner, again, that we can want to figure out whether it was unavoidable and unforeseeable. On the issue of is it incompetence? Is it indiscipline? Is it impunity? I think Honorable might want to agree with me that sometimes the gatekeeper of our PFM, because you see, we entrust the Parliament of Uganda a lot in the management of public resources in Uganda, and that is everywhere from the Constitution. The Public Finance Management Act really holds the institution of Parliament as that gatekeeper that will always check what the executive is planning, what the executive is doing. A bit of political economy and analysis, Felix, is that we have a government that has ministers that double as members of Parliament. Okay? By design, the minister is aligned to the executive. And by design, a member of Parliament is aligned to the legislature. Okay? Where you have a sizable number of ministers doubling as members of Parliament, you begin to see that these colleagues, in all intentions and purposes, might either not effectively oversight the executive because they are the legislature also, but they are the executive also. You know, I begin to see a systemic and designed way in which the legislature is set up to fail. You begin to see scenarios of, because I understand with cabinet, colleagues are bound by collective responsibility. You can't out yourself out and say, no, for me, I didn't know. It is the government, it is the executive, and you own up. Okay. Whatever is owned up, you come through, because these supplementary requests are sent to the Minister of Finance, okay, who is a key member of the executive, and they are discussed in government before they give you. Of course, they look at the critical question is, what is the source of this funding that you're wanting extra? Okay. The question is, are we going to cut someone else's budget to finance your need that has come up to seem urgent? You know, have we got in new money? Meaning it has no impact on the current financing framework, either be it tax or loan. You know, now where you have that kind of tough situation, you sometimes begin to see the legislature's mandate and role getting slightly weakened.
Felix, can I come in there?
Yes, please.
You want to interject, please?
It's okay now.
Yes, I've got interested in David's the point that David is trying to drive home. You see, if as Parliament at any one time supplementary came in and Minister of Finance says, look, we planned, we estimated this, but we have been able to collect over and above, and therefore we are coming to you as Parliament to appropriate the over and above, the excess, the surplus in collection. But we have never seen this. All they come for is that, you know, when he talks about source of revenue that is going to finance the supplementary, you know, budget, it is purely borrowing. It's purely borrowing. So that's why I'm calling it indiscipline. Why don't we do with what we have? Why don't we streamline the activities within what we are able to collect in a year? Because some of these ministries rushing to also partake of the supplementary, these are activities that could be integrated with other ministries. But you see, everybody wants to get a share of this, get a share of this, and you are like, if we are getting, the question is, for what purpose are we getting this supplementary? Is it to buy more hospital beds? Is it to construct maternity wards? Is it to give a stimulus to the schools that have been closed for this time? Unfortunately, you'll find if the supplementary comes where it is maybe targeting education, you'll also find the Minister of Water wanting some money. And you say, can't there be integration of some of these activities? You are already the annual budget that was already appropriated. So I just wanted to add that bit of it.
Thank you so much.
The supplementary seems to be aiding increasing our appetite for borrowing the state.
Thank you so much. And as David, you drive your point home. Actually, the minister said that they intend to finance this supplementary of 3.8 through 1. They will suppress some budgets, so they will encourage on some budgets.
Yeah.
But 2, they looked at also relying on revenue collections. We all know that that's a very limited source. And then 3, he said additional borrowing. So I think I agree with that Honorable saying that we find ourselves continuously borrowing to finance supplementary budgets. But back to you.
Yeah, so me, Honorable has brought through part of what would be my call to action, the issue of austerity. And I had alluded to it earlier that Uganda is not ending today, okay? But also, again, for me, slightly back to what's in the ambit of the institution of Parliament, I looked at the supplementary report for Schedule 4 for 2019-2020. And the verbatim State House requested for 2.27 billion shillings to cater for the anti-tick vaccine development initiative, the laboratory restructuring and expression and the production of proteins and equipment. And I'm thinking, yeah, State House is critical in research. We have NARO, we have Minister of Agriculture, we have, and
But on that point, David, on that point of State House, wait, David, on that point of State House, for me, I still have answers. As you drive your point home, I still have answers, and I don't know whether it will be your minister or the minister. Someone define for me spending on State House, because when do we start to have special projects? And isn't State House the home of the president?
My view, Felix, is that the birth of certain innovative ideas could be permissible, but the sustained holding on to and implementing them begins to become one of my problems. This anti-tick vaccine development initiative cannot sit in the State House forever. It's okay for the idea to be born there, okay? It is incubated, grown, but to the fact that it is beginning to get appropriation and its agency is State House, for me becomes the red flag now, okay? I'm all for research and development, okay? But from when you want to get into a bit of what you are saying, you wonder, now for me, I go back to the capacity or I don't want to really doubt Parliament. Why would the Budget Committee of Parliament allow this? Because the committee recommended that the committee observe that the initiative is in advanced stages of critical trials and rollout, and generally, so then it recommends the approval of the 2.7. Why would the Budget Committee approve that? Becomes a question that I'm not sure I understand why they would approve that. Another critical one, there was a presidential directive for paying for land acquisition in Lusanja, Impeded, when the neighbor church that was broken down. This is 7.6 billion shillings. Okay, and you're thinking.
Honorable wants to interject on that one, please.
Honorable, please come in.
Yes. Felix, I just want to make a bit of comment here. You've again and again asked why appropriate to State House when it is just a house. But I want to make a correction.
No, Honorable, that's not the question. I understand you can appropriate to State House a supplementary budget, but for me, I think ties into what he's saying is that the projects under State House, because usually when State House is seeking supplementary budget, in there are projects that State House carries, and I'm trying to understand. Okay, how should we deal with the vote of State House? Isn't State House supposed to be the home of the president, where I expect the expenditures to be those that allude to sustaining and making our president comfortable in the State House, as opposed to having a number of these projects? Because even now in the 3.8 trillion, the number of projects in there have been placed under the State House supplementary budget. That's the thing I want to understand, and I don't think I'm alone.
Yeah, I think the State House is not just a home of the president. It is more than a home. It is in the recent times we've seen the president working within his home. So it is not just a home, but it's also where a number of state activities take place. And I think it is not wrong when it comes to research and development. Any Ugandan can do it, but I think where is it domesticated eventually? After those researches and studies have been done, I think over time we shouldn't see the same budget going to State House. It should eventually be domesticated in the Ministry of Health. I think that is my view. And I believe that if the Committee of Budget made observations that because it was at an advanced stage, the research at an advanced stage, there should have been a recommendation. What is their recommendation? Is what we should now focus our mind to. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
They recommended to approve the 2.7 billion supplementary, full stop. That's all.
Thank you. But so? Conclude your point, David. Then I want to bring in here, Honorable, after you've concluded your point, on the role of let's clearly understand the role of Parliament in this. Where does the buck stop in terms of dealing with this menace? And that's the question I'll be throwing to the Honorable after you conclude your point, David.
The other bit that for me borders on not incompetence, but more over exercising powers is again the Minister of Trade for 2019-20 asked for 20.49 billion shillings to settle a dispute of private companies that were dealing in tobacco that refused to pay farmers. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, here we and this came through as a presidential directive that you pay the farmers. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand the president feeling for the farmers, but this is a private transaction. The other for me is that the Land Commission had about 12.11 billion shillings for land compensations, and I'm thinking, okay, for the principle of unforeseeable, what does the Land Commission do? Couldn't it schedule these? But more interesting is that 3 of the beneficiaries of these, there were notes that were in this report by the Budget Committee that these, and this a total of 3.2 billion shillings. Okay, I didn't note the names of the beneficiaries for their own privacy, but urgent medical attention was the reason. But these payments are being made through the Land Commission, and these 3 payments are 3.219 billion shillings. I'm thinking, okay, wow. So if I have an urgent medical attention condition, how do I get to the Land Commission? For one, for my money to get channeled through there, but for 2, don't we have a healthcare system that we say works? So for me, to get to the question that the Honorable was putting forward, there is an element of a bit of impunity. There's an element of a bit of abrogating the powers of planning and budgeting, because why would the given planner in any institution sit down and seriously plan and budget? Why? When at the end of the day, because like the minister said, one of the sources of supplementary expenditure is cutting existing institutions' budgets. So you can create fiscal space for this new urgent matter that has to get attended to. So it has that bad knock-on effect that it is going to increasingly water down the ability to plan and budget, but also begin to make spending agencies think it's okay as long as the president says he is the fountain of honor, the budget belongs to him for avoidance of doubt. But he empowered the Minister for Finance to manage this budget. For me, it's something that if we have to, we need to get back to the original design of the PFM Act around supplementary, tag it to the contingent, and maybe Honorable has also noticed the contingencies fund is rarely allocated money to. Okay, the 0.5 provision, it was first cut down from the previous figure. It was 3% now, and
3%.
Then yes,
from 3. Yeah.
What was so evil around containing supplementary to that level? I think for me, the previous structure of Section 25 and Section 28 that was repealed totally, wouldn't be having this discussion now. No, institutions were getting forced to plan. Okay, and where it is unforeseeable, 10% of your total budget is what you're going to via, maximum, but with critical and clear reasons to the minister why you didn't plan for it, and more importantly, can't you do this next year?
Okay, thank you so much. A number of comments are coming through the issues around where do we get the money to finance the budgets, why are we having endless revenue deficits. Comments are coming through, which I'll be reading. That a number of questions people are asking, why do we have projects placed under State House, which I think Honorable has just explained. I think the problem is that birthing projects under State House is okay, but there must be a plan to now transfer them to the respective ministries, departments, and agencies.
Yeah.
But let me come to Honorable here. There are two questions. One, which I asked earlier, has allowed David to make his point home, the issue of where does the buck stop? What's the role? And when I ask what's the role of Parliament in here, I'm being a bit sarcastic because I think I know it, but we don't seem to see that gatekeeper role of Parliament to really scrutinize and ask the hard questions when some of these supplementary budgets are presented, some of these budget items, some which he has just been sharing, and there are even here some which for example, they are planning to give musicians 7.7 billion for e-concerts. There's some money put around mindset change. Okay, I think for me, someone has to, if I'm to subject this to the three principles again, it's difficult for me to defend some of the budget proposals in supplementary as presented. But Minister, help us understand here, what is the role of Parliament in critical terms? Okay, where is Parliament as this happens?
Thank you, Felix.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Definitely, Parliament has a role which is well stipulated, and both in the Public Finance Management Act and in the Constitution. One of such roles is for us to scrutinize in details when the supplementary budgets come. And I would say it's unfortunate, this supplementary budget, once they come, it goes straight to the budget committee. I would think that the supplementary budget, this should be reviewed, that just like the budget framework paper, the ministerial policy statements go through the different committees aligned to the different sectors, they should be given enough time. They seem to be brought in a rush, and that's why you're seeing some of these gaps. We should play our role, consistently and be given enough time to do so, because it is just taken to one committee. Sometimes as a sector committee, you even don't know what that sector is requiring, because we then have time to compare with what we earlier approved as per their work plans, as per their ministerial policy statement, and by the budget framework paper. So enough scrutiny and time should be allocated to Parliament to look at this supplementary budget to avoid any gaps that the public is witnessing now. That does not mean we do not have the capacity to scrutinize this, but sometimes there's a tendency for that rush, and only limiting it to the budget committee that then brings to the plenary, and the debate is limited. Maybe you're given 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and you find sometimes you can't put in enough. But we have a role to scrutinize. We have a role to appropriate. And I do recall, I think, there's a time when members of Parliament said, without ring-fencing funds for the women, that's how the WEP fund came into, we are not passing the budget. I think we should stand firm as members of Parliament, of course, taking great consideration on things that could have been unforeseen, like COVID-19, like the locust, and maybe what could have not been absorbed at that time, and maybe unavoidable. Yes, we need to take into consideration those things, but I think we need to be seen to be more firm as real gatekeepers and saying, no, this in this area it is going to be wasteful. What is this 7 billion to musicians? Yes, they've been out of action, but is it unavoidable? Can we do it without it for just a few couple of months left, and we plan for them properly in the next financial year? So we have a role at appropriation to pass or not pass, or to even reallocate to critical areas. And the other role we have is oversight, accountability committees. We have accountability committees and we have oversight. But again, the other time I said, where the minister said they will get this money from budget cuts. But where is this? Where is this budget cuts that are being being put to? As members of parliament now, we can't go to carry out oversight. Some of these things we'll really see when Nambole asks for this much. What is being renovated? You can't see much on paper, but if you get to the field, you really get to see that maybe we erred here. The next appropriation, we must maybe go to the field first and then come back and review these documents on our desk and then pass the budget. So I think we have a role to scrutinize, we have a role to appropriate, we have a role to, through accountability committees, through the Auditor General, we can summon the Auditor General and to give their opinion or even give financial reports, performance reports before we pass any supplementary budget. So we definitely have a role, but I think we need to do a little bit more to be seen to be protecting public funds.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I have a question, and I think both of you will share your perspectives. Yes.
Felix,
yes.
You're causing me some trouble there. I'm not yet a minister, but I can see that I think I have the potential.
I think I'm prophesying. Thank you, Honorable. I think I'm prophesying on you. Yeah, Honorable, Honorable and David. I think I'll first start with Honorable here. There is anecdotal. It's really anecdotal. Let me say it's not yet really proved. But my role here is to tease out the thing behind the thing. There's this allegation that there is a relationship between appointments on the budget committee and how well they can deal with unrealistic budget demands from different MPs.
Wow.
How far true or far-fetched is this analogy? And the reason why people are raising that kind of assertion, unfounded, I might add, is that I think they see the way such a committee behaves when it is expected to safeguard in public interest, public resources, but what usually comes out of these really supplementary budgets and even budget allocations. Help me demystify that. Let me start with the minister, and I'll come to you, David.
Thank you. You have insisted to call me a minister, and I claim
don't know
that.
Why I'm calling you a minister. Honorable. Let me start with honorable.
Yes, I want to thank you, Felix, to say that there's a myth, but I want to make these corrections that to be a member of committee, you are not appointed. We actually individually apply. Our procedures require us to apply for to a sector committee and a standing committee, and the budget committee is one of the standing committees. So members apply, and then they are designated to those committees. The different authorities within Parliament, and even for the NRM, our party, even the SEC do some kind of verification on some of the members, and eventually you are designated either as a member or as a committee leadership. And I know I was once on the budget committee when I first joined Parliament. Now I'm in finance, where I'm the vice chairperson, and national economy. And I did apply for them. Nobody forced me there. And the leadership deemed it right for me to be in finance and the national economy. But I also want to demystify that fact that it's not up to budget committee per se. Even if there were some kind of people put there for some reason, they make observations and recommendations. It is up to the entire house, the parliament, the plenary, to approve their report or not to approve. Even we have seen on several occasions, members of the budget committees, actually, I think what I've witnessed in Parliament, where minority reports comes from the budget committee. So the appointment of maybe this, I don't know whether you want to say those are weakling MPs or whatever, doesn't carry much water, because eventually the report is brought to Parliament and Parliament debates and approves it.
Okay, thank you, Honorable. This time I'm getting it right. Thank you, Honorable. David, your take. David, unmute yourself. I think you are in mute.
Sorry. I think for me it is 3 or 4 things that we need to pick up, Felix, and I think the honorable member will definitely help me reach where I can't reach. One, to where possible, as much as possible, minimize the merging of the executive and the legislature, because that begins to put the legislature in between a rock and a hard place. Okay, for me, that is one of the first windows that begins to make it hard for, even because you see, when you speak to these honorable colleagues, they know what is right and what is wrong for avoidance of doubt. Okay, but at the same time, they are bound by the other decision, by the other group for which they're also members, you know, and it's a tough place to be. And I know honorable understands that. It's a tough place to be in the executive, but also to be expected to be a gatekeeper of the things that the executive is going to do. You know, so for me, as a country, we need to get to a point, for whatever political or government structure reason we have, we need to take the PFM angle and say, for prudent public financial management, this has to stop. 2 is that we need to reinstate. I mean, speak of amendments. There is a PFM amendment bill right now, and I think it's before the Finance Committee.
It's before the Commission of Finance, yeah.
Yes, it's about to allow UNOC to spend money how they want to. But you see, our PFM Act needs to be reinstated. I think for me, Honorable Section 28 of the PFM Act has to come back. That was actually one of the provisions of that law that was gatekeeping in the actual sense of gatekeeping against abuse of supplementary expenditure. 3rd, for me, Honorable, you did mention, austerity is the way to go. Where you have a resource constraint like we have, our revenue collections have been taking hits and blows from COVID and a number of other structural issues in the economy. We continue to spend like we have a bottomless, source of, revenue. I appreciate the need to support our colleagues in the music industry, but for Christ's sake, just open up the night economy and the revenue is going to flow. Do we have to spend public resources on that, given the constraints that we know we're living with, the state of our schools that are trying to figure out how to remove anthills, the state of our hospitals, and you want to, not that they don't deserve it, but when you have a prioritization question, okay, where do you put the money first? So for me, that is more of a fiscal solution. Government just needs to try to open us from COVID. By the way, we're on record to be the longest closed country for the fear of COVID. Kudos to our leaders, but it has impact. So the solution is not giving money. Solution is open up the economy. And I think for me, the last one, Felix, is to settle public wrongs that have happened now, like the breakups of the churches, farmers not being paid by unscrupulous traders and companies. This is not the solutions that always need to come through the presidency. We need to allow to begin to empower the institutions of the Republic of Uganda to do their roles. And if you looked at that supplementary schedule that you have before you right now, most of those expenditures are tagged to presidential directives. He is entitled to them. He is the leader. Okay. But for the sake of prudent public financial management, can you allow the institutions to work? If someone has broken down a church, it's either illegal or not, can you let the institutions of the Republic of Uganda take the due course? Follow up. If a company hasn't paid Ugandan farmers, we have enough institutions and legal frameworks to have that to make them pay. Because part of the reason that was discussed there was that the Ministry of Trade had actually barred this company from exporting the tobacco before they pay. I mean, I really want to have faith in the institution, because you see, a country without functioning institutions, we cannot continue to run on the directives of the presidency, as if indicating that the institutions of the Republic of Uganda are that sick. So for me, addressing supplementary is a bit beyond stop and bring of money. It has a bit of other structural agreements and discussions that we need to make, that have to be agreed upon by the executive and definitely pushed for by the parliament as the gatekeeper for some of these functions. And I think we shall begin to see the use of supplementary as envisioned in the legal framework that we have in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Very, very, very realistic but on point proposals you are really putting across. Honorable, as we come to a close, what do you think? How do we get out of this? I like to call it some kind. How do we exercise this demon of supplementary budgets that seems to haunt every financial year for the wrong reasons?
Thank you, Felix. Felix, I must say I want to agree with David that
okay,
we need to work within our limits. We need to get back to the drawing board as government and maintain fiscal discipline. And the appetite to borrow must be streamlined. We need to maintain discipline and prioritize and put our priorities right, because some of these things will not end today. Just like David had said earlier, Uganda is not going to end today, but we must. For me, the whole thing is about discipline. We have the fiscal charter of responsibility. We have all these things in place. I think these laws, implement them, and as Parliament stand firm and say, no, we need fiscal discipline in this country.
Okay, there you go. Contrasting but complementing proposals or ideas. Honorable believes in fiscal discipline and budget prudency, and whereas David is pushing for how do we give the PFMA, give it back its teeth. I think the teeth, in this case, were they canines, premolars or molars that were removed by by removing 28 section 28 either way, the bottom line is, as a country, we need to do something about how we manage our resources. Yes, Honorable. Honorable, you're making a point, but a bit breaking as well.
I was trying to say that what David has brought out is timely, because we have an amendment of the PFM before Committee of Finance. We shall definitely take consideration. We met Law Society yesterday, and they brought in something new that we think, yes, is very important for this country as well. And we shall maybe try to make amendments in that direction as well. I will definitely sell that idea to the committee.
Please give the PFM
a strong pushback from the executive, Honorable, because they will be happy with that amendment.
And since the committee is still processing this, I think what is this ACF what? You could as well write to the clerk and bring up your views. We are ready to receive.
Thank you so much for the space and the opportunity. Well, we are close to, actually we are under a minute to top of the hour. A number of comments are coming through about supplementary budgets in Uganda and around issues to do with the relationship between supplementary budgets and the rising vulnerability, debt vulnerability of Uganda. But let's keep this conversation on our social media platforms. Allow me to bring this to a close at exactly midday, and thank you so much. With me, I've been with the Honorable, and my apologies for prophesying I'm calling you consistently, Minister, but I think when you get there, remember me, please. Yes, Honorable Avur Jane, the Pakwach District representative, he's been in Parliament for 2 years, for 2 terms, and also I had with me David Walakira, who is an economy policy analyst and development economist. Thank you so much for being part of the discussion and enriching it. I wish you all the best, and all our viewers, thank you for being part of the conversation. My name has been Felix Kafuma, the moderator, and bye-bye for now. Stay safe.
All right. Bye.
The monster of money politics is eating up Uganda's democracy. When you take money from a candidate, it means you are feeding the monster. Then you become a part of the problem. When a candidate who overspends on campaigns is elected, he or she will not represent voters but himself. He or she will engage in corruption to recover campaign money. Social services will not be delivered and the voter will suffer more. Voter, let's be wise. Give democracy a chance. Do not sell your vote. Focus on the issue.